Batya Porter, back again.
Yes.
Super
Back
pumped.
again, couldn't get rid of me that easily.
No, I love it. I tell agents, I'm like, look, you've got to do this more than once. Our first episode is just getting to know you. And then from there, we want to know what you know now. And we talked a little bit about some of the things that we were going to chat about in respect to real estate, kind of things we want our clients to know. But before we get into that, I wanted to chat a little bit about what we were talking about. Kudos to you. It sounds like, you made mention you're kind of hitting that 2-year mark in your career and things are really starting to take off for you. Tell me just a little bit about what you were mentioning before we got on here.
Yeah, so in the span of the last few weeks, in a seasonality time where the market is usually slower, I got 2 listings from my networking sphere as well as 3 buyer referrals.
Amazing.
So I'm going to be looking into maybe getting some part-time assisting in 2025, which is really exciting. I've been at that point where I've wanted it, but needed a little more consistency before I could take that on.
Well, you let me know if those buyers need any help.
Yes, will do. And I'm just excited for things to start, us getting back in the swing of things. The last 2 years have been tough market-wise. Last year we thought it was tough. This year has been even tougher.
Yeah.
And so just getting to a place where buyers are comfortable buying again, sellers are, ready and willing to sell, and just getting things rocking and rolling. So I'm really excited about that.
What do you think? What do you think it is? I mean, is it just hitting the 2-year mark, or are there things that you have been doing that you feel like are finally paying off? I mean, for those newer agents that are sitting there going, well, I don't have 2 listings and 3 buyers right now. Like, how did you do it?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the 2-year mark. The 2-year mark is just the measure of time, but I mean, it's the hustle and consistency that's been going on the entire 2 years. So every day it's eat, sleep, breathing real estate. How can I better educate myself so I can add more value to my clients? And I feel that value is easily shown, and when somebody sees your value, they are drawn to that. And that's how I've shifted my business. I've been networking for about a year now, and that's been amazing for my business. Being able to meet other like-minded, genuine, ethical people who really care about their clients more than their own bottom lines has been amazing for me to grow and expand. And I think a lot of it, all of the deals that we just spoke of are all from networking right now. Every single one of those referrals is either a direct person that already knows me from networking or somebody who referred me one of their family or friends.
Wow.
And so there are a lot of real estate agents in networking, and sometimes that can be a bit daunting for a new agent of, well, how can I compare to somebody who's been in the game 10 years?
Yeah, how do you do that?
No disrespect to someone who's been in the game 10 years, but time in real estate doesn't always equate knowledge and skill set. So, for instance, being business-minded, having a great attention to detail, ethics, those are things that time frames don't really, affect.
Yeah.
Now, education, it absolutely does. And so year 1 for me was my building year, my learning. Like I think I mentioned, over 60 open houses, figuring out the market. In order to add value, you have to figure out what you're working with.
Sure.
And in order to connect people with what's best for them, you have to be knowledgeable about a wide range of things. Because if you're telling somebody something that they already know, you're only providing so much value versus being able to enlighten them on things that they have no clue about or that they know a little bit about. But the whole process feels a bit daunting.
I see. Well, and again, we talk about it a lot on the podcast where, you mentioned having multiple years in the business, or other agents who've been in the business longer, where it's one thing if you're an agent who's been in the business 1 year 10 times. Versus, maybe the agent who legitimately has been growing and educating themselves for 10 years. And so it sounds like you're constantly evolving in your craft, which is great. You mentioned networking, right? And I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But for people who are watching, I talk to agents a lot that, will say things like, I don't know how to network, or networking's not for me. That's not what I'm trying to do, or I don't see the value in it. And I think for a lot of people, they think of networking as like going to an event and just talking to other people, which that's a part of it. But how are you effectively networking that is generating business?
So it's number 1, being consistent and making those follow-up efforts. So absolutely, you can join 5 networking groups, but if you pay and you don't show up, or you show up once and you're not consistent in developing real relationships, the benefit to your business is going to be very limited, if at all. So how I operate when it comes to networking is I meet somebody, I want to get to know them on a human to human level. My goal is truly not necessarily to help them buy or sell a house, but to get to know them, their business, their wants, their needs, see if we align in the way that our thinking is, see if we're a good fit for each other. And even if they love their house and they're planning to live, breathe, and die in that home,
Right.
they know people. Everybody knows somebody. And so I think it's that narrow-minded thinking and networking of, we're all hustling. We have our bills to pay. We have things going on. And so it's that short-sightedness of, oh, you're right in front of me. I need to figure out how to convert you.
Yeah.
But if there's less pressure on converting you and more just organic building that relationship, that value, once again, if you are bringing value into a situation, your value will be seen. So there's less of a push and more of a just getting to know each other.
I got you. So can you give me just an idea? I know that there's probably a multitude of things, but what's a general kind of broad stroke value add that you're trying to provide to the people that you're networking with, or even people that they know?
Absolutely. So for me, number one will be education based. I'm currently working on my 8th real estate certification.
Oh, wow.
And I also have a property tax consultant certification. And all of these are supplemental. Nobody loves to take a class and, do all this stuff, but I'm doing that to better myself so I can better support my clients. The more I know, the more they can know, the more power they have over their situation, which equates to value. Secondary is attention to detail. Real estate and contracts that are legally binding are
important.
very intricate. And so, for instance, one little thing that is overlooked can affect your entire deal. I may have mentioned
Cost a lot of money too.
Oh, yes. I may have mentioned this before, but I had a client who purchased his first investment property and didn't realize that he wasn't able to do any short-term rentals in that neighborhood because that wasn't double-checked prior to closing by his real estate agent. And he said that real estate agent had been in the business 15 plus years. So small things, or you have a really cool boat. Can you park that? Will your HOA let you park your boat in your driveway? Sometimes it's such a small thing, but it affects the overall bottom line and your peace of mind, your happiness, and the intended use. So being able to look at the full picture, highlight everything, and make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, that is huge. And then thirdly, being business-minded. In a market, especially like we're in right now, you have to go out of the box and above and beyond to get things moving, especially on the listing side. So for instance, something that I offer complimentary to all my listings is the day we go live on the MLS or on both MLSs that I have access to, I pay for geofencing advertisements like we previously discussed too.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you take what you have and run with it in the best way possible? So it's looking at or I'll do evening open house events where I'll center it, or I've done a pumpkin patch open house, I've done a wine tasting, I've done a snow cone event. Just how can I use the tools in my toolbox to better attract the buyers for you so you can move forward with your next step.
I love that. Yeah. You made mention of a certification in respect to taxes. I know before we got on here, you mentioned there were a few things that you wanted to touch on in respect to that. So I'm going to let you run with that.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it as easily digestible as possible.
Sure.
Nobody, taxes are not exciting.
No.
They're not easy to understand, and they're very confusing, but you have to pay your property taxes if you want to stay in your home. And so it's something that really needs to be thought of more when purchasing a house. So for instance, in the Austin and surrounding areas, tax rates vary drastically. You can find homes that are 1.6%. You can find homes that are 3.3%. So off a $500,000 property, a variation of that degree could be thousands of extra dollars that you're paying for the same cost of home. And so that's something to consider as well when you're looking in an area. There's so many small variations too. So for instance, there could be an extra taxing entity, a MUD or a municipal utility district. That's an extra 0.5% right there on your taxes.
Yep.
So if one side of the neighborhood has a MUD, the other side doesn't. If you as the buyer are not having that highlighted to you and you're just looking at the purchase price, you're not getting the full picture.
Right.
And so we're top 5 in the country, last I checked, in property taxes.
Wow.
And that is something that so many people aren't talking about. I didn't learn it. I only picked up on it because my second client was an engineer and he was a stickler about property taxes. And we found a house he loved, but it was a whole percent higher than some of the others. And we broke down the numbers and I'm like, wow, this doesn't make sense. Like, why would he pay more for the same house?
Right.
And he found one he loved that was in the low 2% property tax rate. And he's happy and he's comfortable. And with taxes every year, usually your home value goes up. Sometimes it can go down. COVID, threw some things off. But the higher your home is worth, the more equity you have, the higher your property tax burden is.
Correct. Yeah, we run into it in the lending side of things all the time because that's a factor in calculating someone's debt to income ratio. And as a lender, I always tell the buyer's agent as well as the buyers, because sometimes the buyers, it's almost like they don't want to know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They find a house and they love it and they kind of just close their eyes and go, I wish.
See, I'm out there. I'm pulling the eyeballs open. That's my job.
And that's why I connect with the buyer's agent and say, listen, please connect with me when you're writing an offer on a property so that I can get the address. We can dial everything in
For sure.
And make sure that there's not going to be any issues. And property taxes is one of those huge variables because, to your point, you can find one property in a specific area. And because a lot of clients will say, okay, I'm approved up to, we'll just say $500,000.
Yeah.
Well, a $500,000 home in one area versus a $500,000 home in another, it can be a big difference as far as the payment. And depending on where you're at with your debt to income ratio, it can be the difference between you qualifying and not.
Absolutely.
And that's always a bummer when I, find somebody who they identify a property, they're super excited about it, they call me, and I'm like, yeah, the property taxes on this are really, really high, and unfortunately, you're not going to be able to qualify for this. And they're like, well, you said I was good for $500,000, and I'm like, well, it is contingent on the property taxes, and this particular home is pretty expensive when it comes to that. So,
and that's something that I like to do to highlight preemptively as well. So before I take a client to view a property in person, there's a level of research that I do just so they have a better idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
So for instance, I take a look at the seller's disclosure notice. What are the known issues with the property? How old is the roof? The roof's a big factor.
Yeah.
How old's the HVAC system? How old's the water heater? Looking at all, and then what's the property tax rate? What are the HOA costs? Those are things I will preemptively, if I notice a big difference in several properties we're planning to see, I will highlight that to my client right away. So when we're getting ready to go to that property or at that property, they may not fully understand what that means for their payment.
Sure.
But they have a slight idea of, okay, this home comes with this level of property tax rate that this other home may not. And so it's prepping them for there are variations, and the purchase price is just one factor that determines what you're going to be paying. And I mean, you could lose your home could get foreclosed on if you don't pay property taxes. So I have met people that within 1 to 2 years of buying, they're priced out of their house because the property taxes are too high.
Right.
And if that's the case, I feel like the education on the real estate agent side was lacking, because better to purchase with a little more cushion than buy at the top of your pre-approval amount and you have no room for any adjustments.
Right. Well, that's true. And then you mentioned the roof. I mean, the reason that I'm bringing that back is because we run into situations with insurance because of that, which is also a factor in regards to your monthly payments. So you have an older roof, or, there's a multitude of factors that the insurance companies are looking at. So when we're estimating, maybe, insurance is going to be $150, $200 a month. And it's like, well, this particular property has a roof that's, at almost its life's end. And the insurance company is coming back and saying, well, this house now is going to cost $250 a month to insure, because they're counting on the fact that you're going to be making a claim in the next year or two. That, once again, that's going to negatively affect your payment. It's going to make it go up, and it could affect your debt to income ratio. So these are all things that it's interesting to hear you wanted to chat about, because truthfully, it's what I have to deal with more than the real estate agents. The real estate agents just kind of go, oh, okay, well, are we approved? Call your lender. And then I get to be the bad guy. So it's good that you're trying to get ahead of those things, because they can be show stoppers.
Oh yeah, and it's just setting people up for optimal success and optimal reality. My goal is not just to, sell the good of the home, but sell the real. Yeah. And the real is that 15-year-old roof that's going to need to be replaced. The real is the property tax rate. The real are all of the things that may not be ideal or just facts about the property. And then you as the homeowner decide, does this make sense? Knowing the good and bad versus I'm blinded by the beauty. I want this house, but I'm not seeing all of its flaws or its, its full picture now. And then now 6 months down the line, it's already my home. Now I'm freaking out because I'm realizing what it actually means for me. And homeownership is a beautiful thing, but equity to me is, it comes at what cost? If you're stressed every month about making your mortgage payment, you can't enjoy your life. Are you truly enjoying being a homeowner?
Yeah.
Or if now you're at the edge of having to sell at a loss and go back to renting, now you've gone years behind on your life plan for trying to move upwards in a way that may not have been as sustainable as possible.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to be in that house 1 year, 2, 15, 20, 100, but my goal is to make sure no matter the time frame, that home aligns with your goals and what you want.
Well, you've helped me add a new term to my vocabulary that I've been using, which is equity shaming.
I love it.
It's like one of my favorite things because I like to equity shame people, but I'm doing it with a soft
love.
with a soft heart. I wanted to ask you though, because you said that we were one of the maybe like top 5 in terms of was this in the state, the nation?
Nation, so Texas.
The nation as far as okay, so the state itself is top 5 in terms of taxes.
Yes,
that's crazy. That's what I was when you said that. I never thought about it or heard that, and I went, that's interesting. Okay, is that like an Austin thing? Is that a state? So it's the state of Texas is top 5 in taxes.
No state income tax. So it's like you don't have the income tax, they get you on the property tax side. But it's a bigger barrier of entry for homeowners because they're not prepped regularly on paying those taxes on their income. Now they're getting, killed when it comes to their home purchase.
So is that kind of like where the money's going, arguably, is like, it's going because we don't have state tax, so you have additional taxes to I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the main rationale, for there to be such a stark difference. Even in, areas with higher cost of living, states that have higher cost of livings, their property tax rates are not, to the same degree as ours.
What, California, New York.
Yeah.
Do you know what the others
I'm not familiar with their I need to get in on that too, but it's it is one of those things that it's really dependent on the area. So maybe their home values are a lot higher, but the property tax rate is less. And the rates are so finicky. It's so variable. In Round Rock, for instance, I've seen property tax rate as low as 1.67, as high as high 2s. Also, new builds often have higher property tax rates than resale homes because there's less people to break up the taxing entity, and they often have a extra, a municipal utility district, a public improvement district. So that's a factor too. Are you going resale? Are you going new build? What are the variations with that? So there's so much to look at. And I feel like that's my duty. If I'm receiving compensation to assist with the purchase or sale of any property, my job is to make sure that is done with 100%, detail, execution, and effort. That is how I feel like I earn whatever that compensation is. Not what's the most expensive home I show my client, what's going to make me the most money, what home is right for them. And did I do what I need to do to make sure they understand all aspects of what they're signing up for?
Oh, that's well said. I'm glad that you brought up the new build because that's another one that I find, especially now with all the incentives that builders are giving, and they've been coming down a little bit on their pricing and everything along those lines. And I'm going to make a controversial statement here. I'm originally from Cleveland, and up in Cleveland, we have homes that are over 100 years old, and the thing that I really have realized, and this might just be Ohio or the Midwest or whatever, is people are they seem way more inclined to fix their homes. Where down here, it's pretty wild to me, and this is, kind of a broad stroke statement, but I see people that purchase new builds, live in them for like 5 to 7 years, don't do anything to them, and then they're like, okay, we want to buy a new home. And then they go and buy another new build. It's like the weirdest thing. And it feels like a Texas thing because we just don't do that up north.
Yeah. And Pittsburgh, same. I mean, a lot of the homes,
that's right.
They are 100 plus years old.
Right. And so
they're built different.
Yeah. And so I get phone calls from people on a regular basis, and they're like, hey, we're thinking about doing a new build, and here's why. And then that's the conversation. It's like, I just want to let you know that there's a strong possibility because of it being a new build, and the county is going to come in, and ultimately you're the first person that they're going to tax assess this property at. Your taxes are going to be very, very high because on the surface of things they think, okay, prices are coming down. We have all these incentives. This is going to be it's going to be more affordable for us to buy a new build. It's like, no,
it's just more affordable to get into a new build, and that's the difference.
Right.
So many real estate agents will push their clients to new builds.
Why do you think that is?
They're often in the past they were offering higher compensation, but now with the new NAR regulations, you have to be more specific. You have to put in precise numbers. So in the past, you could have had 3% on your buyer's rep, and the new build offering 5%, and you could have received that 5%. Now things are a bit different.
Do you think that's going to come back to haunt buyer's reps? Because not that I know anybody, but I watch a lot of TikToks and stuff like that, and there's horror stories or rumors of buyers reps having buyers representation agreements at a specific percentage, but then going new build and then changing their buyer rep, which I know is not what you're supposed to be doing because it's not in the best interest of the client. And these buyers agents are getting away with it for now. You think that's ever going to come back and haunt anyone, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yes. I mean, I feel like if you're doing things for your pockets and not for your clients, there's always a chance that that's going to come back and haunt you.
Yeah.
Because once again, did you steer your client to that area for your commission or because it was the right home for them? If it's not the right home for them, they're probably not going to be happy in it long term. There may be issues that arise, and that is where problems can come back for you. So when you're purely thinking about the bottom line, the dollar, that can get very scary when it comes to people's lives and their futures.
I find that most agents typically don't have that kind of mentality in mind, but there are, just like any business, there's bad guys out there and bad girls and guys.
Yes.
And,
and I think it's a lot more of ignorance. There's some just flat out shadiness, like they not caring if that client can afford that home for 3 to 6 months. They're like, let me get the deal. If they get foreclosed on, oh well. But a lot of it is just ignorance, not having the knowledge, not having the education, not double checking things, assuming things are fine when they're not. A lot of that causes problems.
You know what I'm very fearful of, and I hope I'm wrong, but this is one of the things I've talked about this maybe once or twice with other agents, and I'd like to get your take on it. So we're mentioning new build. And there are a lot of incentives that are associated with the new builds. And so in addition to the incentives that are associated with it, there's additional, incentives that are associated to the buyer's agent. So just based on percentages, right? If I'm a buyer buying a new build, let's say I'm a new first-time home buyer, and I'm going to take advantage of my first-time home buying opportunities, and I'm going to put 3% down. So the day that I purchase that property, technically, I should have 3% equity in the home, maybe. The builder is going to give me 6% seller concessions to buy my interest rate down, which I'm super excited about because, they're not going to let me use it with any other bank or lender. I have to use their lender. I'm forced to use their lender. I'd be foolish to leave this money on the table. And it's going to get me a super low payment. So I've got 6% there, and then the builder is giving away, let's just say, another 4% to the buy-side agent, right? That's 10% that's kind of like baked into my transaction, right? And I'm going FHA. And FHA, well, one of the things that most people don't know is that in addition to the monthly mortgage insurance premium, they charge an upfront monthly mortgage, one-time PMI of 1.75%. So already we have 11.75% baked in to my purchase price, right? And so let's just call it 12 to make my math real easy. I put 3% down, but I have 12 baked into my purchase price. If anything happens in the next 12 to 24 months, and maybe you have the answer for this, what would you say the average year-over-year appreciation is in Austin, just on average?
I would say really depends on the area.
Let's be conservative. Let's say 3%.
Yeah.
Maybe 5%.
Yeah.
So with a 5% appreciation, and I have almost 12% baked into my purchase, less the 3% that I've put down, right? I've got 9% that I need to make up for before I'm even on my property. And if I need to sell it, what's the average real estate commission cost?
Well, it'll be 3% on each side, yeah.
At least
if
3.
you're paying for both.
Right, so another
6.
6%.
Absolutely.
So now my 12 just turned into 18.
Yeah.
And if appreciation's only 5%, it's going to take me 3 to 4 years before I can even sell my home. And so the moral of the story, and the thing that kind of scares me, is you've got agents that are pushing these incentives. I watch these, hey, builders are offering amazing incentives, right? The builders themselves have signs out in front of their developments that say things, interest rates at 3.99. I've seen 2.99 in one instance, where we know right now interest rates are in the mid 6% range, right? And nobody's talking about this. Nobody is talking about the possibility that if anybody loses their job, hell, if they even need to change jobs, right?
Hours cut.
Anything, that now you can't even sell your house. So if you're going to do all of this and bake all of these incentives in, not only do you have to make sure that you're always going to be able to make the payment, because you're not going to be able to sell it in a normal market for at least 4 to 5 years. And in addition to that, even if 4 to 5 years goes by, I guess what I'm worried about is like, if things start to, I could kind of see like these little mini pockets of foreclosures. Because the other piece of it, that's what I wanted to say. And then even when you do go to sell it, there's a new development over here,
right there,
they're starting to
and
build.
you're not new anymore, and so now you lose that market who wants something that has never been lived in,
right?
And I love that you're bringing this up. Most of my clients have purchased resale. I highly caution against new builds for some of the reasons you mentioned above. My mom always told me growing up, if something seems too good to be true, it usually is. So right away when I noticed these variations getting into real estate, I'm like, how can they offer a 3% interest rate? How can it's a money business at the end of the day. They have to be making money. And it's often inflated base price. And they do that to ensure that all of their appraisals in the neighborhood align when they need to. So as soon as it's a seller's market, they take away that $20K in incentive. They remove that 6% back, and all their numbers. So the buyers right now are supporting the future buyers paying more, and they don't even realize that because they feel like it's a deal. And I have met so many people that not who purchased with me, but that within 1 to 2 years are priced out of their new build completely. And it didn't matter that they got $20,000 off because they can't afford the monthly payment comfortably.
And they can't sell it.
Yeah.
And so here's the scariest part. This is the last piece that I didn't make mention of. So I've been doing this forever, right? When I went through 2008, we had a lot of people that were currently underwater on their mortgage. And this is something, again, going to be a little controversial, but the average consumer is kind of like, they're not the smartest, right? And I remember seeing people that were in their homes that were underwater and they could afford their payment. And just because their property was underwater, they were foreclosing. Just because the house wasn't worth at that time what they had paid for it, right? Oh. Now, granted, there were people that held on, they made their payments on time, and then flash forward 5 to 7 years later, they were like beating their chests on how smart they were and that they bought early. But there were people that foreclosed that could afford the payments just because they were like, I don't even like this place. I don't want to live here, and it's not worth what I paid for it. I'm out. And that's the last piece that terrifies me, is that if anything happens with all of these people who bought these homes with these new build incentives, in addition to the people who maybe lose their job, or maybe their hours are cut, or maybe they need to move for their job and they want to sell and they can't, they're underwater. In addition to all of that, what about the additional people who might just go, I'm out. Like, this house isn't worth what I paid for it. Right?
And that's a scary
can afford
thought.
it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm such a calculated risk type of person, so that that's hard for me to fathom. Like, if having the funds, not doing it, but it's everybody, their life, their finances, their choice, and it absolutely exists. And that's where prepping from the beginning, from the jump, is the best way to avoid any of these things. You can't avoid knowing if your job is going to relocate. You can't avoid certain aspects, but prepping for success. And that comes back to being real. Like, what is the real of this? Every time I show my client a new build, they hear my new build spiel. They know that new builds are thrown together very quickly. They're more likely to have compressed pipes. This is according to one of the inspectors I know. They're inspectors that are hired. are in each home for less than 10 minutes. They have a short checklist. And if all those checks are met, that's all they do. So that's another push. Many people don't use a real estate agent for a new build. They don't get an inspection for a new build. Now you have the first storm. Now your whole house is flooded. Even if you have your 1-year warranty, all your family photos are ruined. And nobody wants to be laid up at an Airbnb after they just moved into their what they feel is their forever home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's another thing to take into consideration is like when you build a new build, like you have settling on any new home.
Yeah.
You know, to your point, you're not 100% sure what's going to happen with water and everything along those lines. You know, at least when you're purchasing a pre-existing home that's, maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, it's kind of been tested.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, because, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, one of the allures, in addition to the incentives and everything along those lines. I'm shocked at the amount of buyers that say things like, I want a new build home because I'm not very handy and I don't want to deal with any problems. And, we just know if the home is new and that we're not going to have to do anything.
It's the same thing about interest rates, right? We talked about last time people getting comfortable once they get back in the high fives. It's this thing of, oh, it's new, so it must be perfect.
Right.
I don't know where that misconception came from, but it is detrimental to people because even the cost of an inspection, okay, you're paying $400 to $600 depending on the size of the home. Mm-hmm. You're protecting your whole financial investment by doing that inspection. That inspector's in there for 2 to 4 hours depending on the size of your property. And they're there for you. They don't work for the builder. So they're going to tell you every single thing that could be an issue. That is the only way to know, especially with a new build, or get any indications of what you're signing up for, because there isn't any seller's disclosure notice. There's nobody to tell you, hey, we've lived here for 5 years, the roof leaks right there, or, we patched up this, or the home is insulated great. We never feel the chill outside. You just can't know those things.
Do you feel that there is some sort of like flex or whatever you want to call it where, because one of my favorite things that I don't say anything to anyone when they say this, but I always kind of giggle inside when someone's like, yeah, we're not first time home buyers. We bought our first home. We built our first home. And then I'm like, oh, really? Where do you live? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're here. And I'm like, that's like Lennar. Right? Like you did not build a home.
You weren't out there laying the foundation.
Not only that, but it's not like a custom build. Like
Yeah.
you chose like maybe you chose a floor plan, maybe. So with that being said, like, do you feel that maybe when people are super interested in, new builds, it has something to do with the idea of like telling friends and family that they're like building a home?
For some people, yeah. I mean, we all have as humans, we all have our things that are our flexes or that we care about. I have heard a lot of people that want to go the new build route and make the comment of, we don't want a home that's been lived in. So I do know for a fact that is.
What do you think? So I got to stop
Yeah.
you. I don't get to have these conversations. What's that about?
I really couldn't tell you because I want to resale myself. When I purchase my first home, it's going to be resale. But I think it's just that misconception, or maybe just like clean energy, no other memories associated with it.
That's what I'm trying to like figure out. Is it
it's the emotional side of it for sure. It's not. There's no real financial reasoning behind it. It's that emotional aspect of, I want my memories, my family's memories, our future to be holy and the only thing coming out of this home.
It's very interesting.
Yes.
My first home I bought, the guy committed suicide in it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And guess what?
Still bought it.
I still bought it. I never had any issues. And then after I bought it, because the neighbors, well, I knew when I purchased it, I was aware of it. But then after I moved in, the neighbors had, the house was 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And the neighbors had told me that there was, before the guy who committed suicide, there was an older woman that died in the house too. I mean, that kind of happens. So when you say like, I need a new home, I'm thinking of energy and everything. And I lived there for 10 years and I never
had a deal like that.
Felt bad energy or anything like that.
My third buyer, my first year into real estate, we found a property that one of the owners had recently passed away. So they were listing it about $50K under comp value. So right away I run those numbers and I'm like, whoa, this is something to look at. And those numbers didn't include the solar panels that were paid off, the solar battery pack that were also included in the property. So really building all that in, I mean, they already started at a really strong equity boost. And about a week, so we went under contract, it was 4 days on the market, locked it in. And about a week after going under contract, the listing agent passes away. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And thank God his wife was also a broker and they were on the same team. So she was able to bring it till closing. Their family was still
Is this
able
like
to
an
receive
older
that.
couple? Like he died of old age?
Yes.
Or like, okay.
Yeah. So the older couple was old age. The agent was a freak biking accident. So very young. And I spoke to him the
That's a
day it
shame.
happened, actually.
Biking, like bicycle?
Yeah, like mountain biking, I think, with his kid.
Way.
Yeah. So it was one of those. So
Bummer.
I cried when I heard that because I'd been texting him throughout the weekend about a very small window negotiation we were talking about, and I hadn't heard back. And I'm like, okay, not everybody works weekends, kids, life, family, boundaries. And I got a text Sunday night from his wife, from his phone, telling me what happened. And I was just like floored. And so I told my clients, I said, listen, if you're okay with it, like I want to really be respectful of this space. Like I'm going to email her for communications. We'll give her about, a couple days to respond. At this point, we're out of option. All of the negotiations had been done. I offered to send some food over to her house. And that's where we have to remember we are humans first.
Yeah.
This is a business, but we're all people.
That's a crazy story. You should have told that sooner.
Yeah, I know, right? But guess what? I was nervous they were going to feel some weird juju in that house. They love it.
Okay.
They moved in. We found out it's like quadruple insulated because the old homeowner also had some health issues. So they're the only house on the block that has that level of insulation. So that's a flex my client likes to talk about. So it's just one of those things, And even back to I guess another story. I'm sometimes bad at sharing my good stories.
Right. Yeah, that's like a wild one.
One of my real estate certifications is in short sale and foreclosures. And actually, growing up, our childhood home was foreclosed on.
Oh, no way.
And I didn't quite know that at the time. I remember moving in Grandma's house. I remember things shifting. And then my grandparents actually bought it in auction back from the bank. Then we had renters in there for a while to kind of, pay them back, do all of that. And so it was something I wasn't quite aware of in full at the time. But growing up, all the pieces came together. And that was something that, it can't always be avoided, but, sometimes things do happen that's out of your control.
Yeah.
And in those cases, being able to get in for a short sale before it reaches the foreclosure, time frame, so it's not affecting your credit and your future and everything is negatively, and you can at least still move forward to a degree.
Right. We, talking about things unfortunate happening, one thing in lending, and I'm very surprised by this. So we have a tendency to close loans really, really quickly, which is great. And I'd say probably about 50% of the time we're in a situation where we can close early. Mm-hmm. And I am shocked at the amount of times that I'll offer the opportunity to close early. And sometimes it's the buyer, sometimes it's the seller, but they're like, no, we're good. We don't want to close early. And everybody just always assumes that, there's not going to be anything that will ever happen. And I can tell you, and the reason that I brought this up was because of your death story. I've had 2 clients die in the process, one of which completely killed the deal, and the other we ended up being able to salvage it and everything along those lines. And then I don't know if anybody remembers, that thing that happened in 2020. What was it? COVID.
Oh, yeah,
we lost a number of deals due to people getting laid off during COVID and so I cannot stress enough, and I really, really feel like real estate agents do a terrible, terrible job of, they just assume that there's not going to be any issues.
Yeah.
And when I'm calling you as a lender and saying, hey, we're able to close this transaction like a week early, would you like to do that? You should be pushing to get all of it taken care of. I'd say the biggest pushback we get is obviously from the sellers where they need more time to move out.
Yeah, owner occupied.
And it's just like, look, figure it out in regards to do a $0 lease back. Do whatever.
Yeah, something.
You know what I mean? Because anything can happen. And, you're going to feel really, really foolish when I'm like, yay, we're clear to close. You want to close tomorrow? And you're like, nah, you know what? We're set to close on the 31st. Like, it's next week. We're just going to go. And then 4 or 5 days go by and I get a phone call. Yeah, Matt, turns out I lost my job. And now I'm calling everybody because guess what? We could have closed that deal. And then that buyer or seller could have lost their job, and we'd still be fine.
Yeah, they just get a new one.
And you're going to get a new one and figure out now now the deal's done.
Yeah.
Until this person gets their job, now we have to wait for pay stubs, all that kind of stuff. It's no joke,
Yeah.
agents. It's no joke. And
Oh,
I know that probably 8 or 9 out of 10 times it's not going to be an issue. But the time that it is, you're going to be really, really sorry when you kind of went, that's all right. I'll just close next week. That's great, though, that you got it clear to close like a week early, but we're good.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's one of those things, too, that some people get thrown off with change, So they're like, oh, we had in our head it was going to be this day.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely on a vacant property, it's a lot easier. In that case, we did receive our clear to close early, but there was an airship affidavit that we were waiting on, a couple other documents that needed to be dealt with. So because of that, we had to close on time versus like a week and a half early. So it's definitely, situation dependent, but absolutely if you can get it done and make it happen. I mean, we hear the stories of people purchasing a car a couple days before they're supposed to close.
Or getting in a mountain biking accident.
Yeah, you never know. And so that's, I think, part of my job is prepping for the unknown to the best degree I can without knowing what the unknown is. So using all the data points from the past and the present to help predict as much of a positive future with those numbers and those data points to make sure my clients have the best chance of success. I can't see it all, I can't know it all, but I can analyze the hell out of what's in front of me and make sure that everything is aligning and making sense.
What other public service announcements do you have for your clients? I know we wanted to touch on taxes, and we've kind of, talked a little bit about new build. Is there anything else that you're seeing right now with your buyers and sellers that you kind of just wish you could, with a megaphone be like, hey, guys, don't do this or do this?
So two things. One more quick little property tax plug. If you're purchasing a home as a buyer and the homeowners are over 65, you are going to need to pay attention to the fact that they have an extra property tax exemption that you won't get until you're 65.
That's a great point.
And we've been coming in, and I've been seeing on different realtor forums issues where a buyer buys a home. They're looking at last year's estimated taxes. They're like, oh yeah, this is sweet. I'm getting in low. Now all of a sudden, taxes are paid in arrears. You get that at the end of the year. It's due a couple weeks later. Now you're scrambling, and if it's not calculated right, there's been issues where it wasn't even put in escrow correctly. If there was lender issues or title issues, so now the money isn't there. Yep. Now you're scrambling for a payment that could be double or triple what you thought it was going to be. Yeah, and that is so easy. Every property that's listed, and then every property that's on like a county appraisal district website lists the current exemptions in place. Yeah. You can look, if you're not sure if you have your homestead, type in your address. It'll tell you if you have it. It'll say if it's over 65. So it's the one more thing, like the attention to detail.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That's important because you may not be able to comfortably afford the house at the actual tax rate. So that's one thing. And then on the sell side, I mean, values are currently dropping right now. It's something that, I wish I could change it, but it is what it is. In certain neighborhoods within the last 3 months, we've seen values drop 20 to 25K. We're seeing homes, the market value can be 30, 40 plus below appraised value. And so we are in a market right now that is on the low side. Now, there are deals to be had like always, but going in realistic, because I can do all of the marketing, I can do all of the advertising, I could scream that house to the rooftops, but at the end of the day, price is going to be the determining factor on how quick a property moves.
Yeah, every time. I mean, if your house is sitting for more than, I would say 60 to 90 days, I mean, it's time for a price improvement.
For sure. And for me, any listing I have, and maybe this isn't the best thing, but I take on the weight of my clients and their goals and their future. So every day I have an active listing on the market, I'm thinking consciously, what can I do? How can I reanalyze things? How can I fight against conditions that I may not have? I don't have control if the home values drop, 20K since we listed. Yeah. But all I can do is keep my clients informed so they're not sitting around till we hit the 120-day mark wondering what's going on. We need to adjust and keep you have to match what's going on around you. Yeah. And whether that's optimal or ideal or not, it's being honest, giving that information, and not waiting till you're 60, 90 days on the market to say, actually, we're now overpriced.
Right. Two things that we've been doing since we're here at the very end of 2024. So the first one that I've been asking a lot of agents that's been fun. What have you in the last 30 days spent money on for your business that you either want to talk about because it's been helping you and been good, or that you would say, I spent money on this, don't do this?
So I overthink sometimes. So whenever I invest and as an independent contractor, anything I invest in my business is on me.
Okay.
So I will usually think about things, larger ticket items for at least a few months, analyze it amongst my business plan. Does this make sense? How long is the return? My mailers, I knew that could take up to a year. So I saved up a year's worth knowing that if I don't get a call before 12 months, that doesn't mean it didn't work. That just means it wasn't its right time yet.
Yeah.
And so some of the things I've been doing
In the last 30
in the
days.
last 30 days, I've paid for two local holiday market events, actually. And I do that as a marketing expense. I'll go to the Dollar Tree, get some holiday cookies, hot chocolate bombs. And now at these events, I connect with people, share property tax knowledge, vibe with them, give them free goodies. And that's been a great way to get my name out there and to build my business. In each one, I meet at least one prospective buyer and seller who is between 6 to 12 months out. So it's definitely more of the long game filling your pipeline, but you're getting your name out there. And so that's something that is absolutely worth it. Overall, it's very low cost and it has a high potential impact. That is something that I've loved. And then I also just recently, in the last 30 days, actually started hiring someone to help with some SEO management. I don't pay for any leads currently. I want to have my traffic being as organic as possible, but I also know SEO and tech is not my lane.
Right.
So it was definitely time, and I wanted to get on it now while things are slower, not wait till spring, summertime, and I'm starting to build up then.
Very nice.
So that's given me a lot of insight on just the technical things, writing more blogs, doing more things on the back end to show up more organically and quicker in a market that's so oversaturated.
That's right. No, that's good. Those are all things that, and I don't think there's just one thing.
Yeah.
Right? You gotta kind of do lots of different things, and they all kind of work together to get the results that you're looking for, which I like that you're trying to really stay organic. I think that's smart. The other thing I wanted to ask, again, with us approaching the end of the year, what are some of the things that you aren't doing now that you want to do in 2025 for your business?
Couple things. I call those my small but noticeable holes in my business plan.
Okay.
So one of them was SEO.
Yep.
Another one is an email marketing campaign. I've struggled to find what is the level of frequency where it's valuable but not annoying. And so I finally came across that. We're going to do like every 10 days. So 3 times a month, high value, low fluff, to try to see if that's another way to stay in touch where it's, oh, this is adding value, or maybe I'll check on it later, but not that, oh, she's bothering me again.
Right.
So I'm really excited to layer those two aspects in ways that I haven't been doing, and also being more strategic about all the events. Doing these events were not something I initially thought was going to make sense for my business. It just kind of stumbled upon me in a very organic way, and then I realized midway through 2024, like, wow, this is something that I really should tie into my business strategy, especially as I'm growing, because I'm having a chance to meet people in a way I wouldn't be able to. And if I'm paying $100 for a vendor event and $50 on swag for $150, all it takes is one person to consider purchasing or selling with me. Doesn't matter how far out.
Right.
And what I've done to even go a step further is this last event, I focused more on the property tax knowledge and trying to build with people who may not be interested in buying or selling, but they know people. So it's just, how can you broaden? You can go much further, and your reach is larger if you're not thinking of the one person that's in front of you. You're looking at the broader picture.
Yeah, you got to know people.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that. It's even yesterday, somebody recommended me on a local community group, and then another guy commented seconding me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like, wow, there's people that you don't even realize are advocating for you, or maybe you met once or twice, and now they're like, yeah, she's awesome. She made an impact. That's what I want.
I love that. Well, with that being said, always a pleasure having you on. I love having you on because I was actually saying this right before you came. Real estate agents in general are typically really good guests. I bring on more people than just real estate agents, but they're really good guests. They're extroverted, they talk, and I put you at the top of those agents. You do really well.
Thank you.
And I'm excited for you. One of the things you didn't say on the podcast But I'll just say it for you. I
Yeah.
know that another thing you're planning on doing in 2025 that you haven't done yet is you want to start your own podcast.
Yes.
Which is exciting, and I think you're going to be really great at that. Anything else you want to cover before we sign off here?
No, I feel we did hopefully this was digestible enough. I know I threw a lot of numbers out there, but it's all important.
I would normally keep going with you, but we're over our hour, and I've got someone else coming in, but that does not mean you can't make it back.
Absolutely.
I hope we see you again.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.